Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season where we're getting unstuck. We're moving forward. We're building momentum. We are the Building Better Developers podcast, the also known as the Developreneur podcast. I am Rob Broadhead, also just known as Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developreneur, also the founder of RB Consulting, where we help you with a technology reality check. We help you get in there before you do that AI project, that big IT effort and investment. So let's make sure that you've got your ducks in a row and ready to make the most of that so that we can improve your chance for success and help you with that roadmap. Good thing and bad thing. Good thing is we are into spring. We are into like things just keeping us busy. And it is a great time to be alive, as it were, because there's so many projects, there's so many advances, there's so many things going on that are just really cool. I'm just going to stop my geeking out right there. But this is one of these times that is an opportunity wherever you want to go. If you want to change your direction, if you want to change your career, if you want to take that next step and suddenly become an expert, this is a time to do it. Bad thing is there's just too much. It is just like every day I go to sleep thinking, gosh, there's 100 other things that I wanted to do. But one of the things I'm going to check off my list right now is pass this over to Michael to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Building Better Developers, also known as Developreneur. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we help you build and test custom software that helps you remove the bottlenecks of your business. That way your business can run smoother and faster. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, getting real busy. It's that time of year. Things are moving forward. Bad thing, we're getting real busy. Don't have enough time for a lot of things right now, so don't have enough time to enjoy the weather. But that's kind of a mixed bag there, but it's a good time, like Rob said, and there's a lot of exciting things going on, like what's going to happen in this conversation.
That's right. This conversation, we're going to continue. Hopefully, if you have not listened to part one, pause here, go back and listen to the first part of our conversation with Matt, because we're going to pick up right where we left off. And rather than waste my breath, let's go right back in and join Matt in our conversation. Yeah, I think mobility is going to continue to be a huge thing as far as being able to move your servers around, your data, and things like that. Because it's traditionally been, you have the EU have their rules, and Asia, China has their rules, and US has sort of theirs, and they try to keep it in a box. But I think we're getting to that point where if you're going to be global, you're going to have to be able to adjust. And it feels like, that's coming. There's going to be more regulation. There's going to be some of these places that were, essentially open before. Now they're not, or maybe it's just not worth it. It's not worth going through the hoops to have a server somewhere else. Just like they said, okay, we'll have something in Luxembourg, and then we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about all of whatever the regulations would be to move data from Ireland into there. Are you seeing? You touched on something earlier, and it really is. It feels like it really is. It's about integrations and being able to connect to data for all these different places. Are you seeing some organizations, because we talked about these big ones that are trying to figure stuff out? Are you seeing them maybe change their tune a little bit on how open or integrated they are, or is it more? Do you feel that it's a push towards everybody's just you almost have to be open, so everybody's going to have to learn how to find some way to play well with each other?
Protectionism comes in much more, right? I mean, we mentioned it earlier. It's so easy to even reverse engineer or clone entire applications. So companies would be silly to load more, especially into wider networks that are potentially non-secured. So among others, we work with one of the largest Fortune 15, in fact, companies out of Korea. They're known for anything from smartphones to fridges to toasters to whatever else. And they have significant requirements on data security, privacy, etc. Now, that particular company is literally big enough that it's too big to fail. So it's, this comes into Korean national security interests here. But at the end of the day, they are more open because they have to be, but there's a lot more. I guess it's a controlled openness, right? So let's look at a couple of things. So API first and the integration readiness is really something that's needed in order to enable this underlying connectivity there. But there are a lot of conditions, and much more now than there have been before. So one would be from a security and observability point of view. We've got plenty, in fact, governance around all sorts of integrations that we do. In fact, what's interesting is that of late, there are a lot of companies that are asking us to deploy the entire integration on their own environment. So it's kind of like go away from the cloud. It's kind of regaining this control. So that was a little bit to the conversation that we had earlier. So I guess enterprises, I don't know, enterprises have been more open at the edges to allow, to kind of open themselves up to be more relevant. But at its core, they've become very, very strict. So that's really what we see here at the moment.
Now, are you seeing that, like, for example, like at the API level and things like that, is it as much, really, I guess, is it as much security as it is anything else, where they just want to make sure that only the right people are let through and only the correct data is pushed out? Or do you see it as a trying to just sort of protect their environment a little more, or is it maybe a blend of both?
Security is non-negotiable, right? So that needs to be there underlyingly. It's protecting whatever is worth protecting. So I guess, companies that we see, they certainly say yes to more integrations. They say yes to more best of breed applications. They say yes to new ideas in an AI environment as well. Mind you, that really needs to be sitting in a sandbox first before it then slowly gets released. But they say no to anything that cannot govern. And that's really the important part. It goes back to control, and I think that's really where a lot of these laws that we're going to be seeing as well. We mentioned Korea, we mentioned the European Union. But there's even in the United States, Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, has quite interesting laws coming up there as well. And ultimately what it means is the CIOs, CTOs, but also the wider organization, chief data officers, they need to be ready for all of it. And it's thus the entire organization at large.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just saying, well, go ahead and fish off, because I'm going to switch gears here.
Yeah, so you talk about governance, and I've worked in different governances of healthcare, banking, commerce. For those that don't work in those type of industries, the idea of governance is kind of a foreign concept to them. And you might be like the bleeding edge of AI. You might be building these systems. You might have the best APIs out there, and even the best security. But how do you ensure, or what would you recommend to our listeners to help them be better at governance, to be aware of these things, so that they don't build something that in 6 months could completely be blocked just by a bill that gets passed in Europe or in the US?
Yeah, that's a good question. Always start with a legality. I mean, first of all, know your customer, right? Each different customer in different industries will be subject to different levels of governance. Always start with the legalities first and look into what's openly being discussed, and basically be ready for those parts. What I mean with that is, you want to ensure that you become, to an extent, a subject matter expert in that particular field that you're trying to solve. Again, we had the HR example. Let's use that again as an example here. So let's say you're building an HR tool again. That obviously touches a lot of different data points from personal information. It would have people's personal contact details, addresses, LinkedIn profiles, whatever other details that might be scraped. It could be social security numbers in the US, could be police reports, anything could be in there. So first of all, making sure that that data is 100% secure, because you don't want to end up on the front page of any sort of news outlet. But in addition to that, so one part is a legal obligation that you obviously have. On top of that as well, it's like you kind of, for yourself and your business, you've got the obligation to think at least 12 months ahead from a regulatory landscape and build or advance the product in order to fulfill that. So one example again would be for let's pick the European Union. You might have different source systems. You might have a Workday, again, related to this HR model, right? So you might have a Workday, you might have some sort of application talent management systems. All of these gain information, and then your AI that you may have built does some form of AI screening. So making sure that data is completely anonymized, that it's masked, that the AI algorithms don't take personal identifiable information into it, that then the destinations of ultimately what's happening with that is 100% clear, and that you've got audit logs in the entire scenario. Because then you can go to any CIO, CTO, or data compliance officer and say, hey, dear Mr. Officer, we've got your source systems here. This is your internal data, and it happens to have all this personal identifiable information. What we then do here, we cleanse that data, and then from there it goes into target destinations. If that is a problem, then, well, we happen to have a solution for that. But ultimately what it is you're taking data, you're making sure compliance sits within it, and that in itself could be a product if you really wanted to sell it that way, before it then goes to its target destinations here. And that is really just governed by what is it that you know today in terms of regulatory, a little bit of common sense on top of that as well. And what we often see is that especially data compliance officers in larger organizations take an existing piece of regulatory text, they put their own flavor on top of that, and often they make it a little bit tougher than it was before, sometimes also to add their own signature.
Yeah, everybody's got to have their own fingerprint on those things. It feels like nobody wants to just like pass it on through and say, yep, we'll just go on with what's there. You got to make that little bit of an improvement. I want to switch gears a little bit back to sort of our initial, swinging back around to like AI readiness and things like that. Is what we mentioned, a lot of different things that you can do, a lot of problems that need to be tackled as part of doing this. What is maybe one thing that you see that is a common area where companies are not ready, particularly, I would even throw like maybe a blind spot where they're like, yeah, we're ready to go. And you start digging a little bit, or you scratch the surface and it's like, oh, wait, no, we don't actually have that in place. Is there something there that you see as sort of a common, blind spot for AI readiness?
A little bit to the beginning of this conversation, very often, and back to Gartner as well, if you don't have data that's AI ready, then your entire AI readiness project is doomed to fail. So think of it this way. If you've got a lab environment with incredible AI capabilities, and I'll give you an example actually. There's an insurance company in Singapore we've worked with. This insurance company has had a very successful trial having a voice AI agent that listens in to incoming conversations with customers. They then had the customer service team, sometimes semi-trained, sometimes not trained at all, only follow what's on the screen. So we're having our conversation about any type of whatever inquiry there might be, and the answer will always appear on the screen, which is amazing, right? Because you've got immediate training, the people can immediately hit the ground running and listen, well, listen to the conversation, but literally the correct answer is displayed in front of them. Worked perfect in sandbox, failed in production. Why? Because various different changes in terms of weather event changes, in terms of other sort of legislations. I mean, look what's happening around the world in terms of travel disruptions. All these sort of things weren't built natively into that tool. So the tool knew seemingly everything in the sandbox environment, but then didn't naturally evolve with that. It kind of was continuing to operate in its own little black box. And as a result of it, the entire project at least failed. They didn't completely shelve it. Now we're involved because, again, to the point earlier, we need to make sure that data integration is there in order to allow for real-time data to flow into an AI system to make good recommendations or to at least give the right answer with it. So it's an ongoing project. It's going to go live pretty soon. I think it's going to be really successful. But this is a great example of where you've got something that's worked particularly well in a lab environment. So you've built your Ferrari engine in your lab environment, and then you drop it into the rest of your environment, which happens to be, to continue the analogy, a golf cart, and the chassis snaps. So, and there you have challenges that are then, often resulting in some embarrassing conversations internally, because it all sounds good on paper and it did work well in that environment, but then at scale it failed. So it's only data integration, or at least the readiness of data wherever and however you get to it. That really needs to be taken care of.
So do you see this? I mean, part of this obviously is you've got to get your data correct and things like that. But if somebody wants to move from a proof of concept or something along those lines, sort of a sandbox environment into something production, are you seeing? Do you see where there is opportunities for guardrails and things like that to sort of dip a toe into production, or is this one of those that it's usually they're in the sandbox and then they've moved into production and that's when it really starts to fall apart? Or are there some things that, I guess it's mitigated risk that a company that can go through to move from that sandbox into production, especially if they are a little bit concerned or unclear about how that's actually going to work in the real world?
Use cases, right? So many companies have segmented their entire database. So if they're doing it right, and that's what we're going to be doing in this example that I mentioned with the insurer, we're only going to be focusing on one particular product first. So incoming call, you either talk to it or press a number. I think you have to press a number at the moment, and you end up getting routed to a particular department. That particular department then only focuses on travel insurance, for example, which is going to be used in isolation. So therefore, you don't have to immediately to focus on everything insurance, right? So in that case, and that is the end goal. But you want to make sure that you've got manageable proof of concepts that can last under pressure, and that you obviously have fail safes in place, so that ideally the people that are running this, it's a little bit like your autopilot car problem. So you want to make sure, it's nice to see that the car drives itself, but you still want to be in control if it really doesn't handle a situation the way it's supposed to. And that is in a defined scope. You're only going to be focusing on one or two use cases in areas, and from there you slowly expand. And every single time you're going to get another learning, and every single time there's a different customer or a different complication coming up, you need to make sure that this entire system learns from it. And that's really the important part, because otherwise you continue just having your black box that you're just trying to, or your sandbox environment that you're trying to move further upstream. That needs to naturally grow with it as well, in order to adapt to all the different all the different environments that it's going to be exposed to over time.
Are there any particular tools or systems out there that you would recommend to help people test their systems to make sure that they're ready?
there's various different out there, of course. We closely work with a company that focuses on that. We're under NDA with them, though, so I'm probably
It
not
could
the
be
best to talk
general.
about this
I
here right
mean,
now.
part of the question
Yeah.
is inclined because if I'm starting out, I'm getting into AI, I'm building these systems. What are maybe a way to flip this around is what kind of questions should I ask about my system to make sure that it's ready, to make sure that it's prepared to be taken out of the sandbox and it's ready for the real world?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the real world, it really comes down to it's expect the unexpected, right? For the most part, and that's exactly the challenge, especially when it comes to AI, because people will test it. I mean, an example is chatbots that have famously been deployed on major websites. I think major US car manufacturers were some of them, and it turns out that it was just a trained ChatGPT. So, and in the end, people were joking, saying, cancel your OpenAI subscription. You just got to go to automaker.com, and I'm not going to mention which one it was, but it was a big one. And look, you don't want to create these environments in production. How can you best test that? You can really make sure that you've got the right guardrails in place, because the honest answer is you won't be able to robustly test against the entire world's imagination of which options might be possible, right? I mean, I could be, next time you're calling your favorite pizza agent and an AI voice greets you, try to ask it for, something completely out of the ordinary. Chances are it's going to fail, and it's just going to put you through to an operator because they want to save themselves the embarrassment. And that is really where you can, I mean, there's various tools. You can try different scenarios. You can try to be as creative as you want to be. At the end of the day, you need to be ready for learning on the go. And I think with that, the most important part is having guardrails in place so that if something happens, if exposures are coming up, if questions that aren't supposed to be coming up are being raised, all these type of details really need to be addressed. Let's go one level deeper on this, actually, because if on the one side you've got an incoming, so there's various different ways on how you can look at your data, right? So the data then comes in. You want to make sure there's almost like an interceptor that tests, and that's almost like AI testing AI. Is this information that's being requested in breach of any laws? And these could be internal laws or overall laws. On top of that, inappropriate questions being asked against it. If yes, reject the order, reject the request immediately. If no, it passes through. And then from there, it just comes down to how do you want to manage this? Do you want to manage this with your own internal AI bot, or maybe is there a separate run? You can have different AI bots and different knowledge and LLMs as well that are trained to do different things to provide better answers for it. So you can create architecturally, very easily create that flow. And a request comes in at the top. Based on what it is, it passes the guardrails, and then after that, it's ultimately being routed to this particular expert with it. If you then focus on, it makes it easier to fix things that are broken as well, because if it turns out that the advisor for pizza happens to be making mistakes all the time, but the advisor for pasta is fine 90% of the time, well, then you need to focus on this one that happens to be giving you some grief, and all the other ones at least you can ignore for the time being. So that's going to make it a little bit easier rather than having to re-architect everything and look at everything from scratch.
Well, as usual, it feels like time has flown by, and it's been a great conversation. So, for those that are out there in the audience that would love to learn more about Until I Pass and some of the things that you've been talking about, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, thank you. Best way is to go onto our website, intellipass.io. IntelliPass will connect any of your data. It's designed to be completely deployment flexible, so you can deploy it on premises, in the cloud, in a hybrid environment. We even have a G7 NATO partner that deploys it in an air-gapped environment. And it's really all about the flexibility and obviously underlying security with that. If you're an AI startup and you need data integration at scale with it, happy to have a conversation. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. That's Matt Zoltau. Zoltau is spelled with an S. And yeah, looking forward to having the conversation with any of you. And most importantly, Rob and Michael, really appreciate your time. Great to be on, and I enjoyed the conversation. So yeah, appreciate it.
Good. Well, thank you so much. We will wrap this one up. For those of you out there, we are not done. We'll continue with another interview right around the corner, and actually a weekly challenge just a couple of days right around the corner. As always, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. And so our bonus thing, what would be either a challenge that you would put out towards those that are thinking about trying to step into an AI project, or maybe like a something that like anybody that's about to step into an AI project, something that you would just sort of recommend and say, hey, here's something you need to think of first?
It's a great question. Because it depends on the industry a little bit. My honest challenge is always look at the regulation of it. And what people always tend to look at, in my opinion, and this is across enterprises and everything, by the way, is they're looking at what's happening right now, what is affecting me in this particular moment, because it's sometimes scary to look around the corner because you're also not 100% sure what's there. My challenge is take what's there and assume literally the worst of that and the impact of that, and then create scenarios on how you would attack those. So one challenge, for example, that I tend to put out for myself all the time is I take a scenario and I say, how would we solve this? And sometimes AI helps with this, sometimes I guide it in a way, but then actually use AI to your advantage here, and you can just use your favorite LLM with that actually. Ask it for different iterations of that from different angles, because that really gives you an opportunity to, one, see the problem, and that might be the apocalypse problem that you've put out there, but you can start seeing it from different angles, and it actually might give you, subconsciously, it'll probably give you product recommendations on where you should steer the product, because that way you're literally 5 steps ahead of everybody else with it. Because you've thought of something that's so ridiculous that nobody thinks would come. But if you can confidently look into customers' eyes and say, we've solved that particular use case here, and people are saying, well, that's ridiculous, nobody, like, we're not going to be facing that. But that buys you a lot of credibility, because if you've thought of the example that really nobody really wanted to think of, but you've solved that, then that buys you a lot of credibility that you'll also solve the other things that are seemingly a lot more trivial.
That is I know I put you on the hot seat, but that is an incredible answer. I love that answer. So I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for hanging out. This was a great conversation. I connected with you about 3 or 4 different ways, so I'm sure we will keep in touch and things of that nature.
Gotcha.
If there's any way we can help you, definitely reach out. Definitely would like to just continue to see you guys be successful and your customers just as well as everybody else is like to see some success. There's a lot of not non-success going on in the world here with all these projects that are likely to fail or that Gartner at least thinks will. I'd love for all of us to sort of find ways to get ahead of that.
Look, it can be preventable, right? As Gartner rightfully said, and there are various other analysts that said similar things as well. The only reason these particular AI projects failed was for the lack of basically AI-ready data. The data wasn't there in order to support the rest of the project. So the projects themselves were fantastic, but the underlying data needs to be there. So, yeah. You're not going to be building another kitchen in your house if you don't know that the water is going to arrive by the time you turn on the tap and ideally disappear in real time when you start pouring it down the sink. So you want to make sure that is clearly taken care of before you even consider the kitchen or the bathroom. Even worse, you're trying to press the toilet flush, you better be confident that disappears. Now, what's interesting is that when it comes to data integration is always overlooked. It's always like a hindsight because everybody's looking at just the next shiny thing. But then that next shiny thing needs to connect with something. So, once you're taking it out of your sandbox or your POC environments, it starts to fall over. So, and that's really because that underlying plumbing isn't there. But nobody would have thought it was a good idea to just build a kitchen somewhere where clearly there's no pipes going to or from it. So really think of your architecture is no different to a multi-story building. Make sure that plumbing is there. Obviously we're happy to help with that. There's plenty of opportunities with that, but really make sure that is robust and make sure your applications that you might be building as well are really tailored to where the customer needs it to be. Not just right now, but in 3 or 5 years' time. Maybe that game changes. You might be ready enough to then pick it up and put it exactly where the customer needs it to be.
That is perfect closing thoughts. We'll let you get back to your day or your evening, as it were, maybe. And thanks a lot. We'll reach out to you when the links are ready, and feel free to share those wherever you do. And thanks, Matt. This was a great conversation.
No, really appreciate it, guys. It was nice to have you both on. Michael, you're in Nash, or is that right?
I'm in between Nashville and Memphis.
Oh, nice. Well, quick. I spent a little bit of time in Nashville in the past, so I don't know if you've heard of a company called Smile Direct Club. Yeah. So I used to look after the entire Asia Pacific expansion, and so with that, headquartered in Nashville. Anyways, they went belly up. Longer story. But was a unicorn startup, went from 0 to I think 16 billion or something, maybe a little more. To nothing. But anyway, so that's why I spent a little bit of time in Nashville. Cool, literally cool city. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So yeah, look us up if you're ever back.
Yeah, perfect. Cool, guys. I appreciate your time.
All right.
Thanks for having me. And we'll talk again soon. Enjoy Portugal, and let me know if you need any Germany recommendations or anything along those lines.
I will do so. Thanks a lot, Matt. Have a good one.
Perfect. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Speak soon. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Matt.